Hello, 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 hello. Okay, at least people can hear me. Let me check. What happened today? Link. Hi. Oh, I have to make sure I can also hear me. That's not good. Let's see if that. Hello. Can everybody hear me? Well, there are only two people in the call, Hassan and Abashek Osman. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, the audio is coming from somewhere else.
Yes.
But Hello, 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 hello. Okay. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay, that's good. Um, why is the audio coming from? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm a little bit surprised. Maybe Hassan and Abhishek. I'm not sure why we don't have more people joining. Was there some miscommunication on the timing of the session? Is it? Hello? Can somebody just type in that they can still hear me? Then I can start the session. Oh, okay, okay. Thank you, Hassan. Was there a reason why we only have like, yeah, 3 students joining? Like, did I miss something or what happened? Does anybody know? Or is it because of all the issues with the administration on the academies? Is that the reason, or are there only 3 students? Who knows? Is there some uh, is it prayers time and I've missed something, or does anybody know anything? I mean, I've let me just post again a message in the WhatsApp and then I will start the class and at least cover what I want to cover. Um, okay, I'm almost ready. I'm just posting this message on WhatsApp. So, okay, okay, you don't know. Okay, no worries, no worries. Let's start. At least let's make sure because you have all joined that at least you get the value from the session, and then the session is being recorded, so we can post it. We can post it. So somebody's joining from iPhone guest. Okay. Hopefully you can see my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen, and I may need to just go back to see, make sure I add people. Okay, so today's session is around information. I mean, it's about the course information strategy. I mean, we did not have this session last week because I had like a last minute business meeting to attend. But the focus of today's session will be on the chapter 4 from the Lawden book, which is about ethical and social issues in information systems. So we will talk a bit more about it. We still have this is lecture number 5, so we still have like 3 or 4 maybe more lectures left. So we will try to cover a few other things in those 3 to 4 lectures. But today and also maybe next time we will talk more about the ethical and social issues in information systems. Really important for you to know if you join a company as an information system analyst or ICT analyst, etc. It's kind of important to be aware of some ethical and social issues. So that is what we will cover. The Yeah, this is just the link to the Google Classroom. Hopefully by now, I think most of basically everybody is actually on Google Classroom, so that's great. That is also where we can post assignment, etc. Um, okay, so a bit more about ethical and social issues um, in information systems. Let me get to the presentation mode. Um, so yeah, I mean this is a big topic. This is a big topic because business ethics is very important, which is about how do you treat people's data, how do you use people's data, and how do you um, carry out your accounting practices. People can go to jail for not following the right rules around it. People, companies can be fined in millions and billions of dollars if they don't follow proper rules around it, etc., etc. So it's a very important topic to be aware of and at least spend some time learning. So in this chapter 4, we will cover questions like what ethical, social, and political issues are raised by information systems. What specific principles for conduct can be used to guide ethical decisions. So what sort of principles should we follow to make let's say a balanced ethical decision. Why do contemporary information systems technology, meaning why do the new information systems technology and the internet pose the challenges for the protection of privacy and intellectual property rights, etc. So this is creating a lot of challenge these days, and we will talk about one example which is very recent. So we'll talk about that in a second. How have information systems affected everyday life? Yeah, that most people know how it has affected everyday life. Let me admit other students. So those are the things that are covered in the chapter 4. uh, okay, let's go a little bit more into it. So in terms of business ethics and in terms of companies following ethical practices, there have been a lot of issues or a lot of cases where the business has made bad decision and they have paid a heavy price. And so this just to set the context and just to set the scene, here are some of the examples of recent, I would say, um, cases where the business did not follow proper ethical practices. So Barclays Bank, which is one of the big banks in UK, in England, one of the world's largest banks, admitted to manipulating its submission for a benchmark interest rate in order to benefit its trading positions and the media perceptions of bank's financial health. And it was eventually fined $160 million. So it's a significant amount of fine. GlaxoSmithKline, which is a pharmaceutical or a healthcare company, it did certain things and failed to report certain kind of safety data, um, and actually it was fined $3 billion. So it was a largest healthcare fraud settlement in US. So these type of things can happen if you're not following proper ethical practices, and it's not just that you will be charged or fined a certain amount, but people can go in jail. So for example, like the McKinsey and Company, which is one of the very big consultancy companies. For McKinsey and Company, the CEO of McKinsey and Company was charged in this thing called insider trading, in which some information about the company and you share it to with somebody who can trade or does a stock market transaction based on it to gain something from it. And he was sentenced to jail for 2 years or so. So not knowing, not understanding the code of conduct or the regulations around ethics and some of these items can put you in really a lot of trouble. So that's the overall context. But a big role can be played by information systems and technology. So the chapter 4 focuses on, let's say, the 5 moral dimensions of information age. And we will come to an example in a second, but like in information technology and systems, there are quite a few things that around quite a few things around ethical and social and political issues that are relevant for information systems and information technology. And so information rights and obligations, meaning what kind of right does a user have and what kind of information you can take from them, etc. I think that's one part. property rights and obligations, meaning, if somebody shared, um, what we call intellectual property, meaning, some sort of idea that um, is patented, or if an idea that is not yet patented but has a lot of potential, how do you share such thing and how do you protect such thing? Accountability and control. So who's actually accountable if a company impacts or does something to an individual or to another group of individuals? So like, who's accountable in a company for this, etc. Then the system quality. So a lot of IT systems collect a lot of data about your own behaviors. What is the quality of that data, and can they charge, can the police or the national agencies charge somebody for fraud, or for some sort of a activity that they did not do? Is the quality of the data in the system good enough to actually put somebody behind jail, etc., or not? And then quality of life. So what values should be preserved in the information and knowledge society? How should the institutions protect against such things? So this is like a big topic. And the most important part here, or let's say the part we'll focus on, is more like information rights and obligations. So like, as a user, or as a user of a certain company's application or IT system, what rights do you have? What rights does the company have to use your data, etc., etc.? So that will all fall in space. Let me admit this person. Yeah, Azad Muja. So that's good. Um, Moving on. So a lot of technology trends, uh, it is actually because of a lot of improvement in the technology space that these ethical issues have become more and more important, and actually have become more and more relevant as well. So some technology trends that cause or increase the ethical issues are shared in section 4.2, or table 4.2. So the computing power doubles every 18 months. So the speed at which the computers work and the speed at which the computers can process thing is doubling every 18 months. Like, so that's like very fast rate with which companies can process data. So they want more and more data now. They want more and more data to process, and they can take all your behavior and your data related to whatever you're doing on the systems, because previously they couldn't process it so fast, so they didn't really want to have it because it will just block and just cause them more pain. But now they can process it really fast. The data storage costs have declined drastically. So people can now store more and more data because the storage cost is very little. Something that would have cost, let's say, $100 to store yesterday, or let's say 5 years from now costs only like 1 cent. Like, it's just so much. It has gone down so much that more and more data can be stored. Data analysis has increased quite a bit. So we can, we talk about this in our emerging technologies part when we do the data analytics piece, that the data analysis has advanced quite a bit. Networks have advanced quite a bit, so we can share a lot more data. Like you're now, most of you might be joining this call from mobile, so the network has improved, so you can share a lot more data. So that has increased ethical issues as well. The mobile devices have grown a lot, so we'll have a lot of mobile devices now in the world. So that has, of course, increased the amount of tracking that happens on where you're going and what you're doing, etc. So all of that has raised a lot of ethical issues. And then there are two maybe specific concepts to be aware of. So one is called profiling, and what profiling means is, uh, basically, a system is collecting data from various different places to build a profile of you, uh, so that they can understand you better. Like, okay, what websites do you visit? What kind of content you read? What kind of things you're buying? What kind of posts, or let's say, what kind of topics you're reading about? All of that, the systems can collect and profile you to say, okay, this is likely a person. They already know your age, so it's okay, this is probably a person of 30 years old, interested in science and technology, and is also trying to start his own company, or is trying to learn more about data analytics, and so let's sell him some more solutions or products around data analytics, or sell him something more about science and technology. For example, I'm just making it up, but if they can create your profile that helps them to sell you things, or to um, trigger you into buying something that is that is more likely something that you like, etc. So profiling is one way. A lot of these websites like Google, Facebook, are doing all the time. Apple as well. Apple, Google, Facebook, they all do this to try and figure out what kind of person you are, etc. And then there is something called uh, NORA, non-obvious relationship awareness, which is largely used by government agencies where they are tracking data from a lot of different systems. So they're tracking data from your bills, your phone records, any other things you're buying from the main biggest sites in that country. If you're on Facebook, Google, etc., they have to share this data with the government. So the government is tracking data from multiple areas and trying to compile it into one place to try and say, okay, can the who could be the potential dangerous people versus not dangerous, or who could potentially be people who are involved in some sort of a crime versus not involved in some sort of a crime, etc., etc. So this had a lot of ethical issues related to it, like how much of your face is recognized by can be captured on video, and and all the details of you can come out, etc. So there's a lot of ethical issues are being created by technology. So that's the main point of this slide that we try to convey. um, then let's move on. So what are some of the um, what are some of the process steps that we should follow? So in the book and in this chapter, they kind of talk about some of the steps to follow if you are, let's say, someone who's building information systems. So you are someone who's owner of an information system, or you're building some information systems. Then how do you build in ethics into that system, or how do you treat the topic of ethics for the information systems? That's something the book sort of proposes 5-step process. Let me see if somebody's trying to join. Yeah, it proposes 5-step process to figure out, like, this could be your approach to figuring out, okay, how should I tackle this ethical information or ethical issue. And then we'll talk about something that's a very, very recent, like, is going on right now with Facebook. So we'll talk about that in a second. But the steps are: identify and describe the facts clearly. So if you're stuck in some sort of ethical situation with regards to IT, then you need to find out, okay, who did what, and to whom and where it was done, etc., etc. So if somebody breached some system, or if somebody tried to access some information, and you are claiming that they tried to access confidential information, for example, how do you build how do you ensure that you're not charging somebody incorrectly for, or accusing somebody incorrectly. So these steps could help. So define the conflict or dilemma and identify the higher order values involved. Ethical, social, and political issues always reference higher order values. So things like, by default, you have to assume that the person is actually trying to be honest, but only if proven by facts that he or she was trying to steal some confidential data. Only then you can have some sort of a case to be built against that person. Identify all the stakeholders. Every ethical, social, political issue has a lot of stakeholders in the game who have an interest in the outcome. So yeah, it's important to think more broadly about it, and not just with that one person involved, but like who else could have been involved and who else is impacted. Identify the options that you can reasonably take. You may find that none of the options satisfy the interests of people involved, but that some options are better than other options. So yeah, this is now you're getting in a bit in the solution mode. And then identify the consequences of your options, etc. Now, one good example is the situation that Facebook is in today. So, how many of you know that Facebook is in a bit of a problem today? And how does it links to ethic, or links to moral, or let's say links to doing business more transparently? So can somebody share what is Facebook having a problem with today? I mean, like, have you? Is it in the? I'm not sure if it's in the news in Somalia, but is it in the news for everywhere else in the world, and particularly in US? Do you know anything? Yeah, data privacy. That's right, Kaltuma. So yeah, data privacy, individuals' privacy. Um, there was a scandal where a company called Cambridge Analytica was involved, where they stole the data from Facebook, or Facebook says that they didn't give it to them, but Cambridge Analytica took it from Facebook. So I'm sure there's something else going on there as well. Facebook might have sold that data to Cambridge Analytica, but anyway, whatever is the truth there. But Cambridge Analytica got data for about 50 or 60 million users on Facebook, and they could profile the users to figure out um, who they will likely vote in the election to. So will they vote to Democrat or to the Republican? Those are the two major parties in US. And then Cambridge Analytica was selling this information back to the Republican Party to say, okay, here are the areas and here are the people who you need to influence with some different message or some different political topic, because this is what they think based on their profile, and we could maybe convince them to vote for Republican Party if you talk about these topics, or things like that. So that is just one scandal where Facebook was involved in sharing the users' data that they should have been more careful about, and they should have, followed some more data privacy concepts on. Is there some other topic with regards to Facebook? They are right now in news for something else. So do we know, like, is there some other topic, Kaltuma, that you're aware of as well, or others, Suleiman and Abdi Hakim? Is there something else you're aware of with Facebook that they are in trouble for today, or these days? No. Okay, let me share it then. So they're also in trouble for um, what is called, you know, um, fake news, right? So fake news. Have you heard the term fake news? Maybe people can type in the chat box. Have you heard the term fake news? So I will just write it to make sure you understand what I'm trying to say. Fake news. Yeah, yeah. So that's fake news means something that's not really true, but it's kind of sold as truth. So we say, okay, well, we never went on the moon, or the US astronauts never really went on the moon. We have these evidence to prove that they never went on the moon, and that becomes like a news that is circulated, and I'm just making up an example, right? So but you can do a lot with this thing. So you could say, okay, um, you know, how should I say? Let's say the coronavirus. The coronavirus doesn't spread um, if you are, if you are the coronavirus cannot impact young people. So that is kind of like fake news, because it does impact young people as well. At least scientifically, it does impact. They may not get so much sick, etc., etc. But you know, people can put this news on various websites, including Facebook, to say, hey. Coronavirus doesn't impact the young people. It is just it's just impacting the old people, and so the young people don't have to worry about anything. For example, yeah, and so there's a lot of fake news on Facebook. It is triggered by political parties. It's triggered by all these what we call bots. So these are computers that are just creating fake news and posting it on Facebook, just creating fake news. It could be working for governments. So we talked about last time as well, I think in the cybersecurity one, that governments have agenda to drive, and so and it's not about good or bad. I mean, all governments probably do that, but examples of Russian attack on Russian involvement in Donald Trump's election is one example where a lot of fake news by the Russian bots was circulated on Facebook, Twitter, etc. It's just one example that is from 3-4 years ago, which is still talked about. And so Facebook is in trouble because there is a lot of fake news on it. And Facebook says, well, how can we actually determine what is true or fake? We are not the guardians of truth. That's what Facebook says. That's what Mark Zuckerberg says. So he says, we are not the guardians of truth. We cannot decide what is truth or not. That should be decided by whoever should decide it. It's not us. We are just a platform to share, messages and share information. But that is where this concept of ethics and trust and morality all comes in. Like, okay, you may be a platform for information sharing, but if you're sharing information that is fake news, or if you're sharing information that enhances or increases racism, if you're sharing information that is creating more hatred in the society, or if you're sharing information that is creating riots in certain parts of the country, okay, then you have the accountability to step in and try and stop that. And this is where Facebook, is trying its best to, not become the yeah, not become like the guardian of truth, like not become this company that decides what is right or wrong, but still plays a role in it. And that is where they're trying their best to have an ethical policy, or have more ethics involved in their content moderation, or in sort of reviewing the content that comes up. Um, because also in US there was recently a big incident around a black person who was, who got killed by a police officer, and that created a big, like a movement in US to address, let's say, the racism that exists there. And then again, all of that came back to Facebook, with people sharing, information that was in many cases false and triggering riots and all of that. So information system has an accountability towards these things. It's not that we can say, oh, I'm just an information system platform. I don't really, I'm not really accountable. What is the implication of what I share? So same with WhatsApp. Like in parts of India where I come from, there are riots that can take place depending on what you put on WhatsApp and what you share. And so it's really, yeah, really critical that these platforms take ownership of, what they are, how they are putting in the control to basically manage some of these, yeah, I would say fake news, or some of these, yeah, not right content, that, not content that is not correct, content that's not, so so yeah, that is important. Now maybe another example linked to this is Twitter. So everybody knows Twitter. You know about Twitter? I'll type it just to be sure people understand what I'm talking about. Twitter. You know about Twitter? Um, it's also like a social media platform. It's people can only post short tweets on it, but Twitter has taken a stand to say, okay, whenever somebody posts a tweet that is potentially misleading, meaning that is actually uh, known not to be true, then Twitter will flag it with a label that says this is potentially not the right content, and it will give a link to what is potentially the right content, right? And Twitter went to the extent of actually flagging even Donald Trump's tweets, because Donald Trump, I mean, as we know, many times says things that are actually not true. So Twitter actually started to flag the messages of the president of the United States to say, okay, this message likely has information that is not true. You can go to this or that website to validate or verify that. And that is a big issue, right? But Twitter is taking a stand, and is saying that, okay, we will start to acknowledge the ethical issues in sharing fake news, and we will start to flag things that we believe are not the right, or let's say not the correct information. We leave it to the users to decide what is actually correct or not, but at least want to flag so they will not delete the tweet, but they will flag it that is potentially misleading. So something like that is the accountability, is the accountability of information systems. So when you build an information system that is, let's say, reviewing the applications of, let's say you build the information systems around um, recruitment process in your company, or in the HR, in the HR section of your company. You build a recruitment system that is automatically reviewing the CVs that are coming in. Now, have you built in rules like, okay, if somebody is more than 50 years old, reject that CV, or if somebody's from this or that religion, reject that CV, etc. Those are things you cannot build in the system, or if you are building it in the system, you must challenge back your HR person or your HR team to say, okay, are these rules ethical, and do we understand the implication of doing it, etc., etc. So that's where the information systems is an important part of yeah, the overall, like, the ethics of the company. And so that's I think that's what I want to convey. That's really, really important. Okay, then uh, maybe this is the last slide on this, and then I'll talk a bit about the assignment. So a lot of data privacy. So I think, data. One of the students mentioned data privacy as the challenge for Facebook. So that's true. Data privacy is a challenge for Facebook, but also indeed a challenge, let's say, for Google, for Amazon, for Apple. All of them. And it's nothing. If you think about it from their uh, company's perspective, if you think about it from an information systems perspective, there is nothing wrong they're doing. There are not enough laws, there are not enough regulations that tell them what to do. So they are running ahead of the regulations. So they are actually running faster than how the laws can be made. So, you know, um, for example, on the right hand side here, you see the data privacy law, or the data privacy regulations timelines. So if you look at it, between 2002 and 2013, which is when Google got created, Facebook got created, Amazon became a big powerhouse, Apple launched iPhone, etc. Yeah, there were no laws on data privacy that were telling them how to behave. Only in 2018, which was like 2 years ago, and then only this year, um, some data privacy laws have been created by European Union and by California state in US to start to put some limits around how you can use um, a user's data, how you can treat it, what you can keep, what you can delete. So it's not really, you can't really blame those companies to say, okay, you should have known what or how to protect users' rights. No, I mean, that's where the ethics come into play. Even when there are no laws, there are some ethical values that a company needs to follow. And so what are those values, and what are those behaviors that the company needs to do? So it's a very tricky space. There's no clear right or wrong answer. But one of the laws which I think is good to be aware of is GDPR, is a global data protection right, or something like that. Global data protection regulation, I think it's called. It's active in European Union, and it's active for, let's say, all the companies that are doing business in European Union. And so some of the, like, a summary of that law is, I've shared it here. you know the companies need to be transparent with their data. The company needs to limit the data that they collect to what they can prove that they actually need. um, they can only keep the data what they need. They cannot keep, like, all the data they have collected from a user. And there needs to be a valid reason for why they think that data it needs to be collected, and why they think the data needs to be kept. The data that they keep must be accurate, meaning they cannot keep bad quality data, meaning they cannot keep, like, half of the data about you which is correct, and the other half that they picked up from somewhere which is not correct, but they're using it to kind of sell you things, or using it to profile you in some way or form, etc. So that's important. Limit the storage of personal data. They need to limit how limit the personal data. I mean, personal data means we can track who this person actually is. a lot of times the company will keep the data a bit anonymized, meaning, if somebody gets it, they will not know exactly who the person is. They may know that there is a person who's, let's say, 30 years old, and this is what he or she buys or eats or whatever that is, but he will not be able to identify that that person is actually Vinay Tiwari living here, or with this date of birth, etc. So this law also limits, how much personal data you can keep. Then the integrity and confidentiality of the overall piece, and the accountability, meaning, you know can we identify who was involved at what stage in collecting this information, and who is involved on the company, from the company as well, in collecting that information. So GDPR is one thing that at least you should be aware of. Hopefully now you're aware of it a bit now, um, in terms of law. So this whole chapter 4 focuses on ethics and moral issues of information systems, which I think is also quite important. Any questions or any clarifications on this? Um, Anything? I will wait for maybe 1 minute. If no questions, then I suggest we have a look at the assignment from this chapter, which is about the so it's about a case study which is on chapter 170, um, uh, and maybe I can bring it up in a second to maybe share on the screen. But it's about life on the grid. So iPhone becomes iTrack, meaning, and you may not have iPhone, but it doesn't matter. Your phone is tracking basically everything you are doing. So let me try to get the book. Your phone is actually tracking everything that you are doing, and so to what extent, do you believe that you have privacy when you're using your phone? And it's 170. It's a case study on that. So hopefully you can see my screen. So everybody likes to have smartphone, and hopefully most of you actually have a smartphone with you. And you have hopefully you have Facebook application on it, or if not, I know you have WhatsApp on it for sure. You may have an Android phone or Apple phone, whatever you have, but um, so why do maybe the questions, and you can read the case study and maybe answer some questions, you know and I've given you 10 days to do that, so I'll share that in a second. But why do mobile phone manufacturers like Apple, Google, and BlackBerry want to track where their customers go? So why do they want to track what places you are going, and what you're doing? So you have to answer this question. And do you think mobile phone customers should be able to turn the tracking off? Like, do you believe the customers, like yourself, should you be able to turn the tracking on or off? And should the customers be informed of when they are being tracked, and why or why not? So you answer a bit about, like, okay, should the customer be able to control when they're being tracked, when they're not being tracked, etc.? And do we actually know when we are being tracked, when we're not being tracked, etc.? Do you think mobile phone tracking is a violation of your privacy? Why or why not? So look at this case study, and I mean, again, don't have to be according to a law or anything like that, but what are your personal views on some of these questions? I think share that. That is the assignment for this class, and you have almost 10 days, so from now till basically next week Saturday, to complete it. I will post it in the Google Classroom, and you can sort of, yeah, respond to that with your responses. I'm looking at Kaltuma's question: what they need means what? Okay, let me check what you mean. Okay, sorry, that's not the right window. You mean, why do mobile phone manufacturers want to track where their customers go? Is that what you referred to? Kaltuma, let me come back. Where is my Zoom window? Oh my God, where is the Zoom window? Here, sorry. What they need means what? I don't
Uh,
understand the question, Kaltuma.
you said
Yes, go ahead.
you
I
can
can
hear
hear you,
me.
Kaltuma. Yes.
You, you you said they keep the data what they need for the companies that deal with
Oh,
the
that means.
data.
Oh, you mean that? Oh, that's for the GDPR, is it?
Yeah. So which
Right, right, right.
data? What do they need, and what
Okay,
is
okay.
that
Let me
they need?
clarify that. So that was on the GDPR slide, I think. So let me go back there. Um, so limit data to what you need, right? This is the one, Kaltuma, right? Um, so what it means is that a company needs to have very good reason to ask you for certain data. Like let's assume, so I go to a website and the company sells shoes. Let's assume that, right? So the company sells shoes, and so it's a website I go to buy shoes. And so the company can ask me like, okay, how old are you? What's your date of birth? Okay, that's fine. What is your shoe size? Okay, I tell him my shoe size. But if the company is asking me, okay, what do you eat generally for dinner? I'm just making it up. Or if the company asks you, oh, what magazines do you read, or what news articles do you read, or if the company asks what religion you are of, or if the company asks what political views you have, okay, that is a data they do not need, unless they can justify why they need to know my religion for providing me with shoes, right? So that is what the GDPR rule does. It stops the company from collecting and asking and storing data that they cannot prove that they need for their business. So that's what this means, Kalsum, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And I
Yep.
have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
For the tracking, is it the phone that the phone owners or the telecommunication who does the tracking? Who does the tracking?
Good, very good question. So I don't know why your sound is coming from a different, from my laptop instead of from my headset, but okay, that's a problem I need to fix. Um, so that's a question you have to look at in the case study. But generally, both the phone manufacturer will build in some tracking. So you can think of it like this, right? So phone is made out of hardware, right? So it's like a real hard thing, like it's in your hand, right? There might be a tracking component that is hardwired into the phone. That's one thing. uh, then there might be tracking information built into the operating system of the phone. So if you have Apple, you have iOS. If you have another phone, you have Android operating system on it. So there might be tracking built into the operating system, which is what Apple has, at least for iOS. And then you have certain applications they want to track you as well. So like Google, if you open a Google application, you know, it will always say like, if you want to use Google Map, okay, you have to tell it your location. If you are using WhatsApp, even WhatsApp will ask nowadays for location tracking. Of course, Facebook asks for it. Even the photo, any photo clicking application you take will ask for location nowadays, or say, can we track your location, because they want to tag your photo with your location. And the whole reason they want to do this is that they want to know where you are going, where are you standing for a while, where are you walking, uh, to be able to profile you, to be able to build a picture of, oh, what this individual actually is. And all of this with the intent to potentially use your data to sell you better things, or sell your data to somebody else who can use that, like, uh, if like for example, if I know that I always go to a certain shop, if the company manufacturer, the phone manufacturer or the software application owner sort of knows that I always go and buy whatever shoes from just this one company, then they may want to sell me a lot of ads from a different company that has the same kind of shoes that I'm buying, or a different shoe company that is in the same region or in the same location where I go to buy this always in this shop, but they will say, okay, Vinay, we will give you 10% off if you go to this other shop to buy your shoes. It is also just next to the shop where you always go to buy a shoe, and you can get a 10% discount, for example. So those are the reasons why they're tracking your location, because it's a data that tells them more about you, which they can somehow utilize later on, right? So that's just one example. But yeah, I would suggest, please, have a look at the case study and answer these questions from your own understanding, from your own views. You don't need to know about any of the laws or anything like that. Don't worry about that. But just, think about it from a user perspective, and also think about it from, if you were the owner of that application, if you were the owner of iPhone, like if you were working in the Apple company, would you do it or not? That if I ask you that question, it will make it a lot more difficult for you to answer yes or no. As a user, you will say, oh, I don't want them to track me. But if I say, okay, now you're the Apple company, would you track it or not? And would you tell your user that you're tracking or not? Then it becomes like difficult questions to answer. Okay, I think that is all I had for today. I'm just a little bit disappointed with the number of students that have joined. So I don't know, but maybe in your own, WhatsApp group, maybe can we? I don't know if there's a student representative in the 6, 7 people we have on the call today, but if there is no student representative, it doesn't matter. But if you can please check in your own WhatsApp group with all the students, like, okay, what was the reason for not joining, then at least I know a little bit more about why other students didn't join today. I can imagine that there is this challenge with the administration about the about the academy, etc. So okay, if that is the reason, then okay, at least I understand. But if it's the reason about the timing of the session, or if it's the reason about something else, they did not get the information in time or whatever that is, then if I know that, then I can make sure that it's better for next time. Okay, I think that is it. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I will post the recording and the slides. Hope you found it useful to kind of learn about this ethical and social issues from about information systems. And then I am looking at you to do the assignment and submit it on Google Classroom. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Enjoy your evening. Thank you. I will stop the call now.